All right, all right. Welcome, welcome. Um, my name is Jen Sylvester. I'm from the Remax Platinum office, and welcome to this live stream. Feel free to comment and drop your comments if you're watching this after the broadcast. Make sure you drop those comments. I'll get back to you right away. Tonight, what we're going to dive into is looking at the spring market, getting a ton of questions about what's going on with the spring market. Is it a good time to buy? Should we wait? Is the market going to crash? Where's the inventory? Why is there no inventory? And what's the story with that? And then, what's going on with the home building? Is there more home building coming and whatnot? So I've got the pleasure having my broker owner and friend Scotty Jones to join me today to kind of give his 2 cents and have a conversation here, and looking forward to providing some good content. So welcome, Scotty. So happy to have you on here.
Thanks for having me, and I am glad to hear it's a pleasure to have me on. I usually hear that a whole lot, but thank you. Excited to be here.
Excellent. You have your beverage? Do you have? I have a water.
Just water tonight.
All right, good.
So far.
That's because your kids are watching. So
That's right.
Shout out to Scotty's kids.
Yeah. Hey, Aubrey, Dominic, my wife Megan, if you're watching, we're famous.
So the spring market. So I would say that if we could sum up the spring market or the real estate market right now in 2 words, I would say hot mess.
I would agree with those 2 words. Maybe some other words, but I think it's a family show, so we won't use those. But yeah, I mean, it's what everyone is hearing, right? I don't think anybody is really unaware of that right now, right? So it's a disaster. The truth is there's no inventory. I just got back from our annual conference out in Las Vegas and was able to not speak with all of them, but there was about 7,300 real estate agents out there. And for the most part, in all major metro markets, it's the same story across the country, across the globe, really. I mean, there's just no inventory, no houses to sell. Prices are way up. Buyer demand is super high, and we're all in it together.
So, this is it's almost like Groundhog Day, right? Like it's the same thing over and over every time you get up in the morning, and it's the inventory hasn't changed. It's gotten worse. And, the news hasn't changed. But what's interesting, and one of the things that I kind of wanted to just have a conversation with you about is there's a ton of talk of the proverbial bubble. A lot of people, a lot of buyers are holding back because they're like, oh, this can't last. It can't last. There's got to be a ceiling for prices. There's got to be a breaking point for this market. I'm going to wait until the prices drop. I'm going to wait until things kind of simmer down, until things start going in my favor, and the market's going to crash. I've heard that a lot over the last couple of weeks. People talking about market crashing in the bubble, and like we were talking, offline here a few minutes ago. That's one of the things that I wanted to kind of dive into, because the data, if you look at the data, take out the hype, take out the clickbait, the data doesn't support that, right? The data doesn't support that, because the core of the issue is the inventory, right? It's not interest rates. It's not mortgages that are the regulations are going to be changing and so forth. It's inventory. So, as far as the market crashing, until we get more inventory, until we get more, more homes coming on the market, all the experts are saying there's really no end in sight. I mean, Zillow came out at the beginning of the year. They said, what, 10%? And we both have opinions on Zillow. I think the whole real estate community has an opinion on Zillow.
We could probably do a whole show just on Zillow. Yes.
However, the one thing that they do have is access to data, right? They do have access to data. They do have
all
access
of our data.
All of the data, and for good or bad. So when they come out with analysis and say they anticipate that home prices are going to go up by 11%, it's not something we just kind of shoo away. We listen. And between the end of January to the middle of February, it went from 11% to 16% to 22% appreciation. So which is the exact opposite of depreciation
r-
and crash and bubble.
right.
Um, so so are you, and are you hearing the same things as far as, on your end and
Yeah, so definitely, right? We've got a lot of people that work here with us, and also, friends with a lot of people in the industry, and their buyer clients are a lot of them are saying the same things that you just talked about, right? I'm gonna wait this out until it crashes and all that. And it's just they've been saying that now for though how many years, right? And
Mhm.
it every year continues to go up and up. And at the same time that values are going up, demand is continuing to go up with it,
Right.
and inventory is going down. So it's not creating a bubble. I don't know what you'd call it, but there's no economic factors contributing to a bubble. There's no, like you said, there's no mortgage um, issues as far as regulations or deregulations that are causing this. Home values and equity in homes. I forget
Yes.
what the exact number is, but what did we gain? Like 50,000 on average. The average homeowner gained like $50,000 in equity
Yep.
over the last year. So it's just going up. There's no signs to point to the bottom falling off. There's just so
Well,
much demand.
and I think that when you look at the dynamics of a real estate bubble, typically the market is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's typically because it's artificially inflated, right? It's
Correct.
artificially inflated. When the crash happened in '08, it was artificially inflated because of lending practices. People were getting mortgages that shouldn't have been getting
The-
mortgages. They were leveraged to the hilt. They were coming in with 5%, 3%, no money down.
They're walking
So,
away with money in some cases, literally going to a
yes,
closing, walking away with cash, never making a payment on the
nope,
home. And so that was not a housing crisis per se. It ended up being a housing crisis. That was a lending crisis that caused
yes, yep,
basically the world economy to collapse because of
correct,
what we were doing. Um,
correct.
and if people watching are not super familiar with that, there's some great movies out there that actually are entertaining too to kind of explain it. I don't know if you've seen The Big Short.
Yes,
Big
yes.
Short's an awesome movie. If you haven't seen it and you're watching this and you're not super familiar with what happened, it's an entertaining way to kind of get brought up to speed on these just horrible predatory lending
It's
practices.
very complicated.
Yeah,
I
very
had
complicated.
to watch the movie twice because it was very, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you think it's simple, and we kind of, maybe we simplify things to kind of, it's easier to digest, but the whole process, everything that went behind it was extremely complicated.
Right.
And which now begs the question, okay, so if that's not the reason why, so what is the reason why? So, we obviously have a listing deficit. So the question I've been getting a lot lately is, okay, like why? Why do we have, a listing deficit? I actually wanted to pull something up on the screen here. And
Sure.
this is going to be the Plymouth County 5-year stats, which kind of show, and I apologize if it's a little small, if people can't read it at home, but essentially what this is saying is that, and the thing that we look at are the listings taken, not the listings on
Right.
the market, not under agreement, like how many listings taken, how many active listings came on the market, in a given time. And this is for all of Plymouth County. And you can see from
Yeah.
2018 to 2019, geez, that number is so small. I can't even read that. What's that say?
I see 2018, I see 976. 2019, I see 1077. And then 816 in 2020, 274 in 2021, and down to 217 in
Yeah,
2022.
in 2022. So what that tells us is, yes, there's more buyers coming on the market. Yes, there are more, people scooping up homes faster. But what this tells us that people aren't putting their houses on the market. It's
Nope.
it's not, it's not an issue as much as why are there so many buyers? There are a surplus of buyers. We can talk about that, in a bit.
Mhm.
But this tells us like the people aren't listing. And I read an interesting article, and I wish I kept a copy of it. I was trying to find it the other day, but I read an interesting article about that. And it basically talked about the fact that one of the major contributing factors is people are not staying, they're staying in their houses longer, right?
Mhm.
People would, you're the average, it was 3 to 5 years, then 5 to 7. Now people are staying in the house on average 9, 8 to 10 years. I've been in my house 22 years. This is only my second house. It's kind of, which is, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that wasn't the norm. And in order for us to have that inventory, we need people to move. You need to,
Right.
as the population grows, as people come in, to the country, as people come in from out of state, you need that extra, and people are just not selling. So I don't, that isn't a COVID thing
No,
at all,
not at
right?
all.
I
No.
think initially in 2020, it was a COVID thing.
People
In
were scared. Yep.
2021, COVID had nothing to do with the lack of inventory,
No.
coming on the market.
I
Um,
think, and this is my opinion. I don't know this for fact, but I feel pretty confident about it. I think one of the reasons that we're having people not move is because they're seeing the struggle that the buyers are having trying to find a home. So they're like, "Why the heck am I going to list my house? Where am I going to go? Right?
Yep.
Where am I going to go?" So until everything loosens up, maybe then I'll list my house. But until then, I'm not going to stress myself out. List my house, have to move maybe twice, even though there's ways, as you know, Jen, that we can finagle that. But I think the average seller doesn't really understand that whole process, and they think they might be homeless for a period of time, or they're just never going to find a home
Right.
to move into.
No,
I
and
think that's
I think
part
you
of the
bring up
problem.
a great point, because, I've seen plenty of situations where, um, maybe somebody didn't have the all their options available to them, or they weren't completely educated. They put their house on the market, they sold it quick, and now they're in a rental. And while they're looking, and by the way, I would not recommend going into a rental right now if you
No.
can even find a rental. Like
Yeah.
the rental market, that's a whole nother,
Yep.
conversation for the day, because the rental market's worse than the residential market, right? Um,
I can testify to that for
Yeah,
sure.
it's awful. It's very, very, very tough. But so I wouldn't recommend it for that reason. But in addition to that, you go into a rental, you're in the rental for 30 days, 60 days. You have already missed out on your opportunity to have an even exchange on your property, right? You
Right.
sell your property high, and now the property you want to buy is appreciated and
Right.
appreciated, and you miss that. So I don't recommend. I have, and all my clients that I've met with over the last 2.5 years, the contingency of, subject to the seller finding suitable housing, I think is the best way, unless have the cash to take equity out of your house, or you've got other cash by other means to buy a property
Right.
first.
Bridge loan type situation, maybe.
Yep,
Yep.
sell second. That would be the only way, but doing a contingency that way, and I just had this conversation earlier with a client that, you know, then you have options.
Right.
Buyers are willing to wait. Most buyer, right? They're willing to wait until you can,
Well,
and, for the seller, because even if they have to wait 2 or 3 months, they're locked in. It's
right.
their house. They
And
just have
they
to,
exactly. And like you just said, and I'm going to stress upon that, like you have the upper hand right now as a seller. So you can kind of demand your terms, right? You
Yep,
can say, like, I am listing my house. This is the price. But part of the deal is I'm not moving until I find my next home and get
right.
that under agreement. And right now you can do it. When things eventually do shift, it's a lot harder to do. But right now, that's absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, no, no, no question, no question about it. No question about it. The other thing that I was wanting to mention, besides the fact that, well, did you have any other thoughts on that, as far as the inventory, why there's
Well,
there's so little
so
inventory on the market?
So yeah, I guess additionally to people just not wanting to sell and be stressed out about finding their next place, right? A lack of new construction, right?
Yeah,
I mean, over the last, and I forget the exact stat, you might know, Jen. I think it's been like 12 years where we're in a deficit of new construction builds. So
it's actually been closer to 20 or 25 years,
okay,
a long
yeah.
time. Like, in
So
terms of how many housing units nationwide have to be produced in order to keep us into a balanced market. So
right,
it's been much longer than we've been in a seller's market. No, no
right.
question about it.
And so you take that, you couple it with right now, particularly, you can't get materials, you can't get labor
Yep.
quickly. It's compounding that effect. So there's not enough new construction in general. I think that's contributing, just one of the many contributing factors to the lack of inventory is new construction starts.
Yeah, and I think that, I wanted to touch on that too, with this, with, in this conversation, because of the fact that, I've had clients that are looking for new construction and waiting and, asking, geez, it would be perfect if we could just find a home builder. And I mean, in theory, it's great. You put a deposit on the house. It takes X amount of months. The longer you wait, the more your property appreciates. So who cares
Right.
if it takes a year to do that, and so in theory, it makes sense. Execution is a whole different story. And I've read a lot of articles lately. I don't know if you've come across this or heard about this locally happening, but I've heard a lot of stories with builders feeling the crunch, especially with what's happening with the Ukraine conflict and rising gas prices, which way more affect us from a personal standpoint. And we're talking the cost of the gas in the truck to get the lumber from point
Right.
A to point B. Like, it affects everybody, right? So
Mhm.
the builder signs the contract with the homeowner, $600,000. It takes a year, and then the cost by 12 months goes by, and by the time they're ready to actually finish the build, 12 months of appreciation on the cost of the build has appreciated. So
Right.
now they turn around and say, "You know what? I want another 50,000."
Yeah, I can't
And if
absorb
you
this
don't
cost.
yeah, and if you don't wanna pay it, that's fine. I'm just gonna put it back on the market, and I'll sell it tomorrow. I've seen that
Yep.
I've read about that more and more happening, and like I said, I don't have you come across that at all
So I
locally,
haven't
or
run into that in particular. That's that scenario. I have heard about it as well. I do come from a family of builders and developers, and my father is pretty much retired from that. However, he does do some consulting for some builders, actually down on Cape Cod. And I talked to him, obviously, talked to my father a lot. Um, the numbers he's seeing come in, like on labor and materials, he's like every month it's up. It's just
Yeah,
it's crazy numbers that he's seeing. I mean, when he pretty much retired, like I think right before COVID, so 2019, I think he was saying $200 a square foot roughly. You could build a pretty nice house. It's like doubled since then.
jeez.
So I'm not saying that what the builders are doing is the right thing, but I
Right.
can understand why they're trying to do that because that hurts. You get a 12%, appreciation or upcharge in your lumber and materials and stuff. It's like now I made no money after a year. So
Right.
I got to try to pass it on to somebody. Is it really fair? Probably not, but I, you know, I
Yeah,
have
and
I've seen it.
I don't know that there's going to be, an end to that. I know that there's a lot of, false inflation going on now, particularly with, even gas prices, where the gas I was reading the other day that I could be wrong on this, 90% of our consumption comes from in the United States.
Okay.
So cutting it off internationally is not or limiting internationally is not significantly changing what's happening in our local economy,
So
right?
should it
It's
change it by 10% roughly? Is that what you're
Yeah.
okay?
So the issue is, okay, well, if we still have the potential, it's like the way mortgage rates work, right? Mortgage
Mhm.
rates are influenced by what they hear. Like, it's not
Right.
directly impacted by the Federal Reserve.
Right.
The powers that be hear, and they say they get spooked, and they say, "Oh, I think we should raise the rate a quarter point. I think this is what
Right.
we should do." And then everybody follows suit, but it's not direct. It's all in the rumor mill,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
once they change the rate, and then once the actual news already comes out, it's already been reacted to, so the rates don't change then.
Right, exactly. And I think that the gas prices, I think that what there's a lot of talk about, not to go down this rabbit hole too far, but it does kind of tie into what we're talking about, right? It
Sure.
is it
It's
is
all
something that
connected.
I'm like frustrated about too. It's
Yeah.
like, the bottom line is what you're paying at the pump may not be a direct reflection of what the company that is selling that gas needs. They're doing
Right.
it. What do they call that when they
Price gouging.
price gouging? Thank you. I was trying to think of the term. I couldn't get it. But the price gouging, and that once the prices roll back, they're not, in terms of what it costs the company, they're not rolling back the prices. But we
Right.
still
No way.
feel it, right? And
Well, I
the
think I think I just saw today, didn't they just do an audit on like 50 gas stations in Massachusetts
Did they
because of
really?
their, I believe so. Don't quote me on that. If I can find it quickly, I will while we're talking here. But I thought they did an audit of a bunch of gas stations for that exact reason, because their prices did not correlate with the actual cost of gas. So they're taking advantage of the situation, which is terrible,
Which
right?
is terrible because it affects us way more than just gassing up our car. It affects, like we were just talking about, the builder that's trying to build the house. It affects the Title V guy that's going to trying to do the inspection on your septic system, and it affects everybody. If all of a sudden all of these things start increasing, it just trickles down, makes it harder for
To the right,
everybody.
to the regular person that goes, that's just trying to go to work every day and put gas in their car.
Right, right. Um, and what? So in getting back to while you're looking for that,
I did find it.
you
So
did.
this was updated this morning at 8:52 a.m. The headline reads, Massachusetts Secretary of State calls for gas price gouging investigation.
Do you want to send me the
So
link and I'll put it up?
yeah. Want me to text it to you?
Yeah.
Is that best? Okay. It's from Channel 5. It's on the news. It has to be real then, right?
It has to be real.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, no, I guess that's not surprising, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely. I'm just going to see if I can.
I do want to say, Jen, while you're looking for that I sent you, I love the platform you have here. This is great. Educating
Excellent.
the regular consumer. This is really cool that you're doing this. So kudos to you for taking the initiative to go live like this, because it's not easy. I was a little nervous before I came on, I won't lie.
Oh, I appreciate that. And no worries. No, this is a lot of fun. And the reality of it is I think that, in order to make decisions, in order to help people move forward and really like impact what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help people. It's not about like putting people in homes for the sake of building our business, right?
Right.
And I know we've talked about that at length. It's not about make a sale, grow your bottom line, win the award. It truly,
No.
for me, and I know you feel the same way. It is not about that. It is about helping people get into homes, truly helping people. And I believe that the number one way that I can impact is through education. Like, people make decisions based on the level of education. If there's
Sure.
lack of education, there's fear. If there's fear, there's immobility. I think a lot of people are not doing anything because they have fear, and they're not. If they had the proper information to make that decision, it would help move them forward, right? So,
For sure.
it's and I like to talk, so there's always that.
Well, this is honestly, this is cool. Very, very cool. And thank you for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure. No, we will be definitely doing this again. Here's that article
Yep.
for anyone that is interested, and this is great.
Gas prices
Oh,
hitting
hold
a
on
record
second.
high.
I just drove back from Florida. It was expensive.
We don't need to watch that.
No.
So that's awesome. Yeah, the average going up $4.24 per gallon.
Yeah.
For those that are watching this that are out of state, I don't know. I'd be curious to know what other people are paying.
I know California is a lot more than that.
Yes, it is. So, yeah, this is there it is. Unannounced inspections of 75 service stations across the Commonwealth between March 1st and March 4th. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's
You know what?
fantastic.
I am all for making a profit. I mean, we're in a for-profit business, but you can't kick people while they're down, right?
No.
Like, the prices have to go up anyway. Just make your same profit margins on it, right?
How about that's just wrong.
Right. Right.
I mean, the fact is like, we're making, there's something to be said about making an honest living.
Right.
I don't think that's an outdated saying, right?
Right. I'm not saying do it for free, but
right.
Jesus, you don't have to, stick it to us at the same
They're
time.
making enough money.
Yeah.
These guys are sitting back and oh yeah, we'll take another $2 out of the home, the Joe Schmo consumer's pocket, and while they're like in buying another mansion. Anyways,
right.
I digress. Let's talk about the market. So we've kind of dissected, okay, as far as the market's concerned, the inventory, Why are there so few listings on the market? Which I think, kind of leads into the foreshadowing of, what can we expect over the next, really the next 9 months, probably more. But if we focus on 2022, which is what people are looking, to have answers for, like on the immediate, for certain, that continued appreciation, the big question is going to be is how much. And, but I think we both can agree that it's not a matter of if it appreciates, it's going to be a matter of, is it single digits or double digits?
Right.
And I think that it's the one thing that I just want to hammer home and make sure that people understand that is yes, this is just Jen saying that this is what I think is going to happen, but this is based on what we know and all the stuff that we've talked about, that it wouldn't make sense for the prices to drop. Like, why would a seller put their house on the market when they've got 40 people lined up down the street and say, you know what? I don't need 650. I'll take 600.
Yeah.
They're selling, you know what I mean? Like, that they're selling it. They're Joe Schmo consumer, and they're trying to get as much money as they can to go into the next house or
because they're going to need it to go into the next house.
They're going to need it. They're going to need it. So, I think that, that part of the inventory, lack of inventory, it's a two-pronged problem, the lack of inventory and then the surplus of buyers. And, I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit and the challenges that people are going to be seeing, as far as that, and why we have so many buyers out there. The millennial market is, and you probably know this, the millennial market is larger than the Gen X and the baby boomers combined.
Right.
And they're coming in and they've got cash. I'm a Gen Xer. When I bought my first house, I was rubbing nickels together. It was a condo. I was like, $80,000. It could have been $800,000. And I was okay, what's the minimum I have to put down? Right. And because you're like first time place and you're coming from an apartment and, and we didn't save. We just didn't save, Jenna. We just didn't, that wasn't what we did. The millennials are coming in and they're a generation that saw their parents go through the recession, right? Lost their house, almost lost their house, lost their job, really, really took it on the chin. And they don't want to be in the same position. So they're saving and they're saving big time, and they don't want to jump into the market because they don't want to overpay and they don't want to get it, so they're kind of waiting to see what happens. In the meantime, they're coming in not with a lot. I don't know about what you've seen throughout the firm, but from a firm perspective, but
The Firm, great book and movie too.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm gonna have to watch that. I forget about that movie. That's a great movie. But they're not coming in on the whole with 3%, 5%. They're coming in with 10%, 15%, right? And ready to go. So they're coming in able to compete with these other buyers. And so, I think that the surge coming in from the millennial market, combined with not enough inventory to satisfy that need of the millennials, it's like a perfect storm.
Totally agree. I think so. I actually am on the older end of the millennial generation. And I think too, a lot of, not myself, I jumped right into marriage and kids pretty young, but a lot of millennials are waiting, right, to have families, to have children.
That's true.
And they're able to like build a career pretty early and save some money and put some money aside. So, they lived at home for a while. They got out of college, went back home, got a good job, saved up their money. Like I said, started the family a little bit later. So now they're, 30, 35 years old and they got a bunch of cash that they can put down. Or maybe they bought a house when they were young, right out of school.
Yes.
They're now 35, almost 40 like myself. And they got a ton of equity in it because they bought it 10 years ago when the market was in the tank.
Yep.
So I think that's also part of it. And it is a very educated segment of the population generation. Millennials eat up what we're doing here, right? They dive into the HGTV and all these investment seminars and all that stuff. So I think they're a very educated buyer as well, the millennials.
You bring up a good point, because the thing that I've noticed in my many, I got in this business when I was 2 years old, just to be,
Well, you're in the Guinness Book of Records.
Yeah, you've been in. How is it possible I've been in this business for as long as I have? It's like, okay, I was only 2, so that makes me only 27 years old. Yay!
Nice.
So, anyways, the thing is, with the amount of information that's available, this platform, for example, these millennials are like, I agree with you. They're just consuming, digesting. So when they are coming to the table with an offer, they're not coming to the table going, I think I'm going to offer 1,000 under asking because I'm scared and I'm unsure. They're coming in and saying, I want the house. I've made 3 offers, 4 offers. I've been rejected. I'm done. I know what I need to do. I'm going to come in 50, 75 over. Done.
Yeah.
And it's not, I think they see it from a bigger perspective, in the sense that, maybe they're not going to be there for 20 years, but
Right.
the fact is that the market will eventually, regardless of the pace, it's going to appreciate. That's the way the real estate market, over the last 50 years, houses will never get to 1950s level.
No.
They're never going to get to 1980s level.
Right.
It's not going to happen. Right.
You got big problems if it does. I mean,
it will.
It's the least of our worries.
I always say, when you look at, well, I don't say this, but, when you look at market trends, real estate trends, everything moves from west to east, right? So you look at when you looked at California's recession started in 2004. We saw it coming.
Mhm.
I had my head in the sand. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go buy a condo in New Hampshire because it's the right thing to do. And literally 2 months later,
Right.
I mean, that was a lifelong mistake that I will never make again.
Yeah.
But you look at what's happening in that market, that California market typically leads the country, and it leads the country with prices. And what's happening over there, we're usually about 6 months. Would you agree with that? We're about 6 to 9 months behind them.
Yeah.
And when they go and hit the recession, we were there in about 9 months later, 9 months later, we were in full recession. So I watch what's happening with the residential real estate on the market now. And you say, okay, well, a 1,700 square foot, 1,500 square foot home is selling for $1 million. Here, selling for 600, maybe, right? Or 500.
Depending on the town, yeah.
Yeah, depending on where you are and all these different factors. And, I've heard the argument lately, well, how could it go any higher? Look at California.
Right. Yeah.
If somebody is willing to pay that much money to be in that same square footage, but just in a different part of the state, then that mindset that you can pay that kind of money for a piece of real estate, like, why wouldn't it be here? Right?
Yeah. I mean, salaries and wages are up, right?
Yep.
So why wouldn't real estate go up with it?
And it's only going to go higher.
Right.
And this is the thing that I think is important for people to digest is, and I have this conversation with my first time home buyers a lot, that the ones that are nervous, the ones that are maybe don't have the huge down payment, but they're done paying rent and they want to get into a house. They want to get into a place of their own. They say, you know what, I can save myself money if I can find a house, then, the mortgage payment is going to be less than what I'm going to be paying for rent because my landlord keeps raising it. And we constantly are trying to push that envelope of what they can afford. I think those are the first time home buyers, the ones that are on the brink, are the ones that are going to feel this pinch the most this year with the interest rates and the appreciation. And the thing that I've been advising them and keep trying to keep things in perspective is, if you can make it work now, a year from now, you're in the same industry, chances are pretty high you're going to be making more money.
Right.
That's the way it goes, right?
Right.
That's the way it goes typically.
And typically your house is going to be worth more.
And typically the house is going to be worth more.
Right.
So, I mean, if I had to buy an $80,000 property now versus, 28 years ago, 27 years ago, if I would be like, because my income is entirely different than it was back then.
Right.
Entirely different,
For sure.
Any thoughts on that or anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah. So just, I'm thinking back to, again, about the millennial buyers versus the other buyers and stuff like that too. And I actually wanted to ask you a question. How do you feel about that next generation? Because they're coming up pretty quickly on us too. Gen Z. I mean,
yes,
the TikTok generation, whatever you want to call it, but they're getting to the point now where they might become homeowners, and that could really throw a huge wrench into all of this, right? You add that buyer pool in there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, you know what? I don't. My daughter is in that buyer pool, and she's still in college, and I shudder the fact that I'm old enough to have a kid that might be approaching house buying age. That's kind of surreal, but yeah, I don't. I haven't really digested that, actually, to be perfectly honest. That's a great question. That's going to be very interesting to watch, to see how that that skews. I mean, the reality of it is that, a lot of people, maybe some people will give up and not move. So maybe some people will just, I mean, you can't go below zero for the market.
Right.
And there will never be zero, right? There's always going to be properties. I always tell sellers, be careful, because you can still overprice a house.
You can.
There's a reason why it's not zero, because
that is the kiss of death in this market, is to overprice the house.
No
right?
question.
Once a home sits for over a week in today's market, it's like, oh my God, that must be something horrendously wrong.
Absolutely. and really, if you look at, I watch, I'm sure you do as well, watch the daily hot sheets in terms of what's sold. And I pay attention to, okay, what's closed. And I typically, lately I can do it because there's not as much happening in the market. Before I'd limit to, Plymouth, Carver, Kingston, and then maybe individual markets that I have clients, actively looking in and so forth. But now I can pull up all of Plymouth County, look at everything, because it's not quite as much, transacting, because there's not as much coming on. But I pay attention to, the properties that sell, and then the gap. What did they list for? What did they sell for? How big was the gap? And almost, I would say, close to 100% of the time, those properties that sold for, and they are out there, they sold for less than asking price. You look at the days on market, and it's always like 3 weeks or more.
Right.
Always. And it's like, if that seller had listed maybe a little bit less aggressively, more in line. I always tell people, price the property market value based on the comps. The comps are 3 to 6 months old, which means, yes, there's appreciation,
right?
But you got to set that line reasonably as a stepping, point, a step off point, and then let the market dictate the price.
Right. Because we don't dictate the price, you and I, and no real estate agent does. The market dictates the price.
No, absolutely.
And I mean, the kiss of death is to overprice it. And I think, and this, Jen, your job as a real estate agent is to price the home to get the most amount of money possible.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to price it correctly, or just a smidge under, possibly, but not going high. Because then it goes like this.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would argue the fact that, a property is not, people aren't overpaying for properties. I think that's a narrative that we hear a lot. People are overpaying, they're paying 10% over, 15% over. They're not overpaying. They're establishing the new market value.
Right.
Period. So if you have, as soon as you have, would you agree with that? Like, as soon as you have 2 or more people that are willing to pay, if the property is listed at 500 and you have 2 more people that are willing to pay 575 or more, 575 is the market value.
It's the new, right. It's the new
That's
price.
that's the new price, because as soon as that property closes, guess what? That's the comp for
Right.
going forward for your neighbor. Now your neighbor's comp is you at 575. So,
Couldn't agree more with that statement.
it's, it's a narrative that I think people are starting to come around with, but in terms of, the overpaying, it's just not accurate with this market based on the data. It's just not, in terms of the buyer activity, because if we, from a, you might say, okay, the buyer might say, okay, well then great. Well, then why don't they just price it at 575? Well, that's a strategy on our part. Like as professional agents, our strategy is looking out for the seller, trying to get the best price for the seller. And the best strategy would be start at that, that older market value, because you have a better chance of bringing that price up higher than if you start at 575. Because the mindset of buyers, right now is they're kind of expecting homes to sell over asking. So if they see it at 575, they may say, you know what, I don't want to pay 625 for that house or 650. We're not even going to bother.
And that's why the houses sit that are priced to the max. So
yep. I wanted to get into something that we talked about yesterday, about submitting an offer as cash, but a buyer that is getting financing but submitting an offer as a cash offer, which is something that I've been watching other lenders in the country do. It's now starting to get into this area. There's a local lender in Plymouth that's doing it. I know that you're going to talk a little bit that Model Mortgage, who is affiliated with Remax's, is also going to be, going to be offering it. But essentially, I'm just going to summarize it for those watching. So the premise is that, typically on a typical financed offer is you would get a pre-approval, you present the offer, you make the offer with the pre-approval, and then once the offer is accepted, you have a home inspection, you sign a purchase and sale, and at the same process, same time you're submitting your application to the mortgage company. Mortgage company has to process the loan, they have to do an appraisal, and then in about 30 days from that point of submission of the application, typically they'll get approval. And because the deal could fall apart because the house doesn't appraise, or there's an issue with the approval process, or something doesn't jive with the employment, verification of employment or something, it's a bigger risk to the seller. If a seller has the option of going with a cash buyer, even though they're getting paid the same amount at closing, getting there, it's the path of least resistance to go with cash. So the answer to that, lenders, there's been some creative lending going on. And I think this is creative, not in the sense of 2008 creative, right? It can be just be, this is not.
That was deceptive, not
that was
creative.
Deceptive. Yes, thank you, thank you. So the whole idea is the lender enabling you to do what they call a cash offer. So the premise is you submit your mortgage application before you even find the house. The mortgage company will fully underwrite the loan. It takes about 2 weeks. They check your verification of employment, your tax returns, your pay stubs, your debt, your income. They do full verification, put it through their underwriters, and you get pre-approved before the house is even found. When you find a house, you can go to them. The lender here in Plymouth, I verified with him yesterday. John Arrington actually did a live stream with him a couple weeks ago from Embrace Mortgage. They will do a what they call a desktop appraisal. And I know Freddie Mac just changed their guidelines on this in the past week or so, where what that basically means is a typical bank appraisal where the bank sends someone as a representative to walk through the property to verify that it has 3 bedrooms, that it's in good condition, yada, yada, to kind of make sure that the asset that they're lending on matches up with the value and what they're lending, the amount of money that they're lending. And typically it's always been an in-person appraisal. Now they're rolling over to, or they're moving in certain circumstances, not all, this desktop appraisal. So what John was telling me, what they will do is you find the property, you go to the open house, and it happens very quickly. You find the property, you go to the open house, you see the property in person, decide to make the offer. Call your lender. They do a desktop appraisal within an hour. If the property has to appraise at the amount that you're making the offer, super important. If it does, then at that point, you can submit the offer as a cash offer with no financing contingency, which is huge. Now you're still doing financing, but they've already approved you for the loan. They've already done the appraisal. And those are the two big reasons why the loan will fall apart, and the two big reasons why the seller will take a cash offer over your offer. And theoretically, they can close in 2 weeks. You still do a home inspection. There's no extra with John. There's no extra fees. It's just like a typical loan. It's just the process has changed such that you can literally go in and make a cash offer. I'm excited about this strategy, Scotty.
For sure.
So like you can talk about, like, I know you had said that Model Mortgage is rolling out something similar,
So we are a brokerage where I believe John is a direct lender, right, at Embrace. So we have different wholesalers that we're partnered with, and depending on the wholesaler that we're partnered with, they have different programs that are very similar to what you just discussed. So in a nutshell, they're basically doing the whole thing backwards, right? They're approving, they're doing all the paperwork, proving everything before you found the home. You find the home, you make your offer, and you're pretty much good to go. The only thing that I will say, and I'm not 100% on this, is I do believe before they'll close the loan, they do one more verification of employment. So that could be one caveat, which would make there. Sense. Just because they don't want the borrower to all of a sudden have, lost their job 2 days before closing.
Right.
So that could, you might need to write something into the contract about that. However, it is still a much, much cleaner offer than a traditional mortgage contingency with the typical mortgage trap, or whatever. I'm blanking on the word that I'm looking for, but I believe you know what I'm talking about. Much faster track. There we go.
Yes. Yeah. And the people that would qualify for something like this, this is on all conventional mortgages, 3% or more. So, oftentimes you hear of these spectacular programs, but they're reserved for 20% down buyers or 25% down buyers. But this is for everybody. I mean, you have to qualify from a FICO standpoint. You've got to qualify for a conventional,
right?
That would be the one stipulation. But as long as you qualify for the conventional, I think that this particular loan program has great potential with, arming these buyers against, because the cash buyers are not going away.
No.
These people, there's, and I it's another conversation. I had somebody ask me, well, where's all the cash coming from? Why is there so much cash? And it's, a lot of it's baby boomers that, taking money out of their house because they've been in it for a very long time. Right. Some of them don't have mortgages, and they say, well, we want to buy another house, but we're just going to take the money out first. I have a client that's doing that for the first time home buyer. They're helping the first time home buyer. I mean, there's nothing saying that you can't pay cash by other means and then take a mortgage.
Right. Which is a great strategy in today's market, right? Because the rates are still low. Granted, they're not as low as they were 6 months ago, but use your cash, get in that house, get the offer accepted, and then just refinance, pull your cash out, and to get a great interest rate.
Absolutely. I actually did hear yesterday that the rates may go down again, down to the low threes within the next month. It depends. It depends on what's going to happen, with, have you heard this?
Yeah. So I don't know. Were you on at the beginning of our call yesterday when we had our VP at Motto speaking?
Yes.
So
Yes.
the way he explained it, and again, I am not an expert in the mortgage industry at all. But the way he explained it, and I thought this was pretty interesting, is typically during times of turmoil, rates will go down. And that's because investors and whoever are pulling their money out of the stock market and buying bonds. And the more bonds you buy, the higher the bond market goes, which drives the interest rates down.
Right.
So, I mean, we couldn't really be in much more turmoil right now coming out of COVID. We've got a potential World War III going on. It's, so I would love to see, I don't want to see the turmoil, but I would love to see rates come down. If, something good can come out of it, it would be rates coming down.
Yeah, I think that because, I mean, if anything, the rates, not that rates are high,
No.
when you talk about like 4%, I mean, that 4.5% is not,
No.
it's not astronomical. Like you look at the last 50 years, and what the average, I think the average, we were looking at a chart the other day, and I don't think I have it here.
Is it like
But
6.5 or 7% or
yes,
something like that?
yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. About 6.5, 7% was like the average. So we're still way below average. However, for our first-time home buyers, they're trying to get their foot in the door and they're trying to compete with these appreciating values. It'll just make it a little easier, for them
Right.
to get their foot in the door when a house comes on the market.
Yeah. When that one comes on, well, the other and I don't know if you had something else to talk about on this
No.
cash offer subject here, but we briefly discussed this, and I don't have all the information on this, but I do know there are now companies out there that will pair a borrower that may not have cash but is qualified, and these basically you go into a funding pool, and now these investors are giving you cash to buy a home cash, right?
Yep.
Almost like they're taking a mortgage on the property, but they're giving you the cash. So I don't have it all figured out yet, but there's a company that I have. There's a company that's doing it. I have a meeting with them next week, so I should be able to speak to it a little bit better.
Yep.
But I thought it was really interesting because it's kind of like you talked about. You're now going in with 100% cash. You get in the house. Maybe you have to pay them a small fee, but then you just refinance it to a traditional mortgage in 3 months or whatever. So I'm interested to explore that, because if it's something that can help our buyers right now.
Yes. Yeah, for certain, like, once you have more information on that, let's bring that to this platform and we'll definitely, talk about that and what, update people on it, because I think it's definitely something, any tools that we can provide, I think is
what it's all about, right?
Yeah, it's key. It's key. So, I think the bottom line here, and, in terms of the outlook, if we kind of, come full circle, right? That, if we look at where things are at, where the prices are headed, where the market is headed, I think the general consensus or the general feeling that I want to get out to anyone that is looking to buy or sell right now is just hang in there, persevere. If you want to sell your home, give me a call, give your agent a call. If you need a referral, if you're watching this and you're looking for an agent in Arizona, I've got, great agents across the country I can connect you with. But talk to your agent as far as putting a strategy together to move forward. Don't go into paralysis. Don't go into, oh my gosh, there's a Ukraine conflict, I think I'm just going to stop and wait, and whatnot. And, because at the end of the day, and I'm sure you would agree with this, at the end of the day, I would say most of my clients, with the asterisk of investors, every time someone moves, they're moving because of their personal reasons. It's never because of the market. Never. And the market shouldn't stop you. There's always a strategy. You may change your strategy. You may change how you approach things differently. But if there's a personal need, if you have, I talked to a client today and she said, you know what, I'm retired. I'm in this house. I don't need to be bouncing around this house by myself anymore. I want to be in a condo. I want to be in something, more manageable. I don't want to do yard work. I don't want to have to shovel snow. Excuse me. I don't want to have to deal with that. So should she wait until see what happens with Ukraine? Should she wait till what happens with prices? No. Put a strategy together, which we will do, which we have done in terms of moving her forward. And I think that's the thing is have the conversation with your agent, have the conversation with your financial advisor if you have one, if you need to, and just don't stop from moving forward, because I feel like that might be one of the issues, right, with the situation that we're in now is people waiting out of fear, and fear, lack of information.
Right.
So
And I totally agree with what you just said. I've sold quite a bit of houses over the years, and one of the first questions I always asked the seller was, "Why are you moving?"
why?
And
Yep.
I can't remember one seller ever saying because of the market. Never. It's always a job, or closer to my family, or I want a bigger house, or we want to downsize.
Yep.
But it was never, we're selling just to capitalize in the market,
Never.
because it's not a good enough reason to move. And like you said, unless you're an investor and that's what you do,
Right.
it's never a good enough reason for someone to, because let's face it, it's not the most enjoyable experience packing up
Oh
your
no.
house and moving.
It's stressful.
It's definitely
It's definitely
stressful.
stressful, and
Even
it's scary and overwhelming, and I tell people, like, I can't guarantee that this is a stressless process. However, arm them with information, have a plan, and at least if you know what the next step is and you know what to anticipate, it takes the fear out of the mix. And as long as you can have stress, but without fear. If you have fear, that just makes everything, like, not fear of the unknown, fear of not knowing what's happening, fear of, like,
Right.
what happens if the buyer backs out? What happens if my house doesn't sell? What if I don't get the property I want? Fear of
Right.
all these different things. And as long as you have the information, then you can persevere through the thick of things.
How do you typically convey that information to your sellers or buyers, like, about the process?
In terms of, like, execution of, like, during the
Yeah,
conversation.
like what to expect, next steps, all that stuff.
So, well, I mean, from a tangible perspective, I have a printout. Like, I try to put things, either in a PDF, depending on the buyer or the seller, and whether they prefer digital or paper. But I have it, like, like a flow chart, and go through, and have that there. But I also have, like, a step-by-step Excel spreadsheet that I send them once we have a signed contract on a listing, or a signed contract on a sale. I have an Excel, and it has everything written out with a calendar with the appropriate dates. And then, to be perfectly honest, it's just constant communication, reassuring them that we're going to do this.
Mhm.
I'm there. You were on the right path. We're moving forward. Because you see all this stuff, and you don't hear from your agent. It's scary being alone, right? But I think, I mean, to answer your question, like, how do I tell them? Usually, those that have talked to me know that I'm pretty much like, what you see is what you get. I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to tell you the way it is. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear.
Right.
Whether it be what you like or not is remains to be seen. But I think that not sugarcoating things, but also backing that up with something tangible that they can refer to later. Because when you try to deliver too much information at once, it's too much to digest. When you're just sitting across the table from them and verbally telling them. So I try to put everything in writing as much as possible. So I've got flow charts, and I've got the Excel spreadsheet, and constant. Every Monday I do an email with a video that says, okay, here's the next steps this week. Forget about the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. Here's what you can expect. Here's what I need you to do.
Yep.
This is what I'm doing, and here's the update, so that they can kind of just stay laser focused on where things are right now, and not let things get off the rails.
That's awesome.
If
Because
that
it can
makes
be,
sense.
like we said, it can be scary, but obviously when you have the information, the tools, and the communication back and forth, it makes it a lot less, stressful and worrisome. So
I
very
think
cool.
people just want to be reassured. I think that it's hard to know, with so many different media outlets and so much
Mhm.
information coming at them. I think people just don't know what to believe,
Right.
and it can go off the rails if all of a sudden, you know, and I've made early in my career for sure made that mistake of, well, I gave it to them in writing at the first visit, and why do you, it's been 2 weeks. Like,
Right.
why are you nervous? We talked about this 2 weeks ago. And it's like, no, it's not how it works. They need to be constantly reassured that, not only what the next steps are, but, here's the reason why you're doing it. Here's the next steps. And here's, let's stay, here's the goal. Here's the goal on where we're headed. So, I think that's important.
I agree. Very important. Communication
sure.
in all, not even just our industry, right? All industries. Nobody likes to be a customer that doesn't have any communication with the person that they're supposed to be working with. So
we all know that. We all know that as a consumer, right? Like,
Right.
there's nothing worse than not hearing back from someone or being left out in the cold, and you're like, so what happens now?
Right. What's next?
What's
Remember me?
next?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it like, am I on my own now, or like, what's going on? So I think that's all I've got. Unless you have anything that you want to add or anything. I think we covered everything that I wanted to cover in this live stream. So do you have anything you want to add or anything you want to talk about additionally?
No, I think this was really good. I mean, I think we've kind of covered it. I mean, it's obviously a super strong seller's market. Not a lot of inventory out there. Doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. So just keep, like you said, persevere, keep going.
And be ready for anything, because, we might, it isn't, and I'll always put the asterisk on every video and every piece of information I put out. It is possible I could put a video out next week to say prices are only going to appreciate 3% this year,
right?
Because of new studies or changes or shifts. The likelihood of that is very slim, but anything is possible. But I think the one thing that we both agree on, is that we can bank on appreciation of some sort for the remainder of the year.
I think the only way that changes, and this is, I don't want to go down a whole new road here because I know at the end of our hour here, would be like barring something crazy in Europe, like like a nuclear attack or something like that. That could probably the only thing that would really throw us for a loop here is like something very, very out of the norm happening.
Well, you bring up a good point, and we could go down the rabbit hole just a smidge.
All right.
If that's okay with you. But I was watching the Sunday morning show with Jane Pauley, and they had an interview there with I don't know, one of the United States special, he's in charge of cybersecurity, defense, all this type of thing.
Yep.
And I'm like butchering it.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested, they can look it up. It's on Sunday morning show this past Sunday. They can check out the video. But essentially what he said was that Putin is threatening the potential for nuclear. The probability is that it's not going to happen. What may very well happen is as a cyber attack is very, very real. And the whole article was about, what can we expect as the impact in the United States from this conflict overseas? And there is the potential for us to feel that here. And it's a potential for us to have some disruption in our banking industries, and whatnot, for however it's going to, it's a possibility.
So I don't know enough about cyber attacks. Obviously that's not my forte, but would that be something that would cripple us for like months? Or is that like, we're down for a week, things kind of hits the fan for a few days and then it's figured out?
It's a great question. I have no idea. I will tell you one thing though. I watched the article and I went to the bank the next day and took out some cash.
Maybe I won't watch it then.
because they think about it. We live on credit cards, or I keep all the money in the bank. I buy the groceries on the credit card and then pay the credit card off. I charge everything. I carry a little tiny bit of cash just in case purpose. Go to the gas station, credit card, groceries, credit card, whatever. And so, if somebody crippled my credit card purchases and my tank's on E, kind of inconvenient, right?
I guess I'm going to get some cash tomorrow at Capital One.
Doesn't hurt. My feeling is take the cash. you know, I'm like, okay, well, just how much do I, because I don't know enough about this to say that, you know, to even chime in on a professional standpoint and be like, oh, it'll be only a week. I wish I did. And if any computer guys out there know, like, you know, that can chime in on comments, that would be great. But I would think it wouldn't be super long. So it's like, well, how much can I, you know, how much money do I need to survive?
Right.
A month, 3 weeks, a month with groceries and gas. Like, you don't need all the extravagant, like just the bare minimum, you know? So we have bread and milk and eggs.
Yeah, there you go.
You know,
that's interesting. I will have to look into that a little bit more.
I think it's worth, and you know, and the fact is like, okay, so it might disrupt us for a month, but then I think that we'll be right back on, you know, what the probability of it affecting everybody, every single mortgage company across the board.
Right. Just impossible. It seems impossible. I guess I don't know enough about the grid or however the hell all that stuff works. Right. But it seems like it couldn't be something that would cripple us for a long period of time.
Yeah, it could. I read.
I hope I don't eat my words.
I know. I was on YouTube the other day. Big surprise. I was on YouTube the other day, and I was scrolling through, and I saw this clickbait, and it said, pull all your money out now. The market's on the brink of collapse. Like everything's gonna, like your bank's about to collapse. Like it was just one of those extremist. The real estate market is everything's gonna implode and everything else. And I'm thinking, okay, like we need people not to be watching that stuff. No, but that stuff's out there. But I don't think that's.
Yeah, no, I don't see that. Stock market was up today, for what it's worth.
I try not to look at the stock market too much. I'm not anywhere near retirement, so I don't want to be. I don't want to have the joy or the headache or the pain or the heartache of any of my investments. But thanks so much, Scotty, for giving up your evening away from the kiddos.
This was fun.
I appreciate it.
This was fun.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. And if you have any of those watching this after the live stream, if you have any questions whatsoever for myself or for Scotty, please, shoot a comment down below, and we will get back to you in a very timely fashion. And, make sure to check out my other videos on real estate, whether you're a buyer or you're a seller, investor, or if you're looking to move into the town of Plymouth, plenty of community videos on the area with more coming soon. So on that note, Scotty, have a great night. And
awesome. Thank you, Jen.
to you soon.
Have a nice night. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.